Ever been wounded by a whisper more than a scream? Why do some people use calm voices to control the room? And what if your worst isn't raw honesty but emotional sabotage? Welcome to a space where silence isn't peace. It's power, where the past isn't forgotten, it's quietly weaponized, and where emotional honesty walks a thin line between vulnerability and manipulation. In today's video, we unravel 3 deep-rooted psychological patterns hidden behind everyday words like "I'm not mad, but I remember all my exes were toxic," and "if you can't handle me at my worst." These phrases sound harmless, even empowering, but behind them lies something else: emotional ledgers, control disguised as calm, chaos framed as authenticity. We'll explore how ancient Stoic wisdom meets modern emotional intelligence, revealing how unspoken judgment shapes behavior, kills dreams, and teaches you to walk on emotional eggshells. This isn't just reflection, it's transformation, because healing isn't loud, growth isn't dramatic, and peace doesn't beg for permission. It reclaims the narrative. Stay with us, because what you hear today might just reframe your relationships forever. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and join this growing community seeking clarity, not chaos. 1. Sometimes we forget just how powerful silence can be. Not a scream, not a raised voice, but that gentle, certain tone that says, "I'm not making a fuss, but I remember it all." It's not aggressive, not explosive, just quiet. Yet the damage, it lingers, hidden beneath calm waters. Today, let's explore what lies beneath that sentence, because behind those words lives a pattern, a form of emotional leverage that keeps one person in quiet authority and someone else in perpetual caution. Imagine a chess game played with invisible pieces. Each reminder of a past mistake, apologized, or unresolved becomes a piece placed quietly on the board until they have power to checkmate you emotionally. That's emotional ledger keeping, storing every misstep, large or small, and keeping it in reserve, ready to be pulled out when control is needed. You don't burst into tears. You don't have to explain yourself. You just feel that subtle shift. Your heart tightens. Your mind goes gray. Your body says, "I'm on thin ice." I want to share a story. John, a middle school teacher in his late 40s, married for over 2 decades. He once forgot a small anniversary 16 years ago. He forgot to celebrate. He brought her flowers later that week, even took her to dinner, apologized. Then years went by, until one day, during a calm conversation, she softly said, "I'm not making a scene, but I still remember when you forgot our anniversary in 2008. She didn't yell. Her voice was like calm water, but when it hit him, it was as if ice formed in his chest. John told me, "It felt like my past mistakes were buried with me, something buried deep and never brought to light until she chose to dig them up." That isn't trust. It isn't intimacy. It's a calm power over your psychological space. Here's what happens inside your body when you hear a calm reminder like that. A study from Carnegie Mellon University found that emotionally painful feedback triggers cortisol, your stress hormone, more than actual physical pain. Even a casual but critical remark can leave you physically tensed. Quiet, stored frustration hurts more than explosive anger because it's unpredictable and often unjustified. You can't prepare, you can't negotiate. You're left feeling guilty for something you thought was forgiven. The great Stoic thinkers Marcus Aurelius Epictetus warned us about letting past injuries define us. Marcus said, "Reject your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears." Who sets the injury? Someone who keeps reminding you. But Stoicism offers a different view. Past mistakes are not debt, they're data, and once learned, they don't need to be endlessly repeated. Epictetus taught us, it's not events themselves that disturb us but our judgments about them. So when someone calmly reminds you of an old wrongdoing, what breaks you is not the memory, but the judgment you attach to it. Meet Sarah, a creative photographer. She once missed a cousin's birthday, nothing major, no drama. Months later, her partner said, not upset, but I remember it. She smiled, but her words felt like shackles. Every time Sarah showed enthusiasm for her work, she'd sense judgment. A mental tally ticking dot. It didn't hit at big moments, it hit slowly, always there in subtle ways. By the end, Sarah hadn't lost the person, but she'd lost her confidence to take risks, to dream big. Here's the painful truth. Emotional ledger keeping isn't a fruit, it's a tool for power, for silence, even for punishment. Every stored mistake is a lever. And you become quieter, you adapt, you keep your dreams smaller, you speak less, smile less, take fewer chances because the cost seems high. You don't need to shout, you don't need to confront. Here's how to respond in a way that frees rather than fights. This hurts because I valued forgiveness. That's insight. I hear you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry. I also believe this was healed. Instead of returning to 2008, can we focus on how to move forward? I will never forget I hurt you. I also choose to grow from that, not stay stuck. This is power. Not of control over someone else, but of ownership over your own story. A friend, David, had a heated conflict. He spoke harshly. He apologized. His partner cooled, but 6 months later, calmly reminded him. Instead of arguing, he nodded, apologized again. Then he never brought it up again. He redirected the conversation to the present. The future. His calm and dignity said everything. It wasn't weakness, it was sovereignty. He refused to participate in the silent power play. Ask yourself, are you holding on to someone's past mistakes like weapons in your back pocket? Do you often say things like, I'm not mad, but I remember? Is the person saying this to you actually trying to stay in control, not just express a feeling? And most importantly, can you say to yourself, yeah, I remember the past, but I choose to move forward? In Stoic terms, you can't erase the past, but you can choose not to bail water from yesterday's boat forever. You grow, you repair, you learn, and then you move forward, because that's how life works. If someone wanted to grow with you, they'd say, I remember that mistake and how far you've come. Not, I remember that mistake and I still hold it. Those quiet remarks aren't passive at all. They're deliberate. But you're not powerless. You own your growth. You define your forgiveness. You choose when a mistake is a lesson, not a life sentence. And you deserve to walk without fear of emotional debts that are never spent. Thank you for walking through this with me. May we all learn to forgive ourselves and others, not erase memory, but release its power. 2. All my exes were toxic. It's repeated with conviction. Sometimes with a gentle laugh. Yeah, I just can't catch a break. But beneath that laughter is a pattern and a story that rarely includes self-reflection. When someone says, all my exes were toxic, they're telling you two things. They were always the victim. They never played a part in those toxic relationships. The implication, no need to change, just others needed to be different. Let's pause there. If you've faced heartbreak, pain, even abuse, you deserve compassion, understanding, recovery. But saying all my exes were toxic without nuance, that's not healing. It's a cloak for one-sided judgment. This isn't romantic healing. It's emotional absolution without accountability. And that shield makes you a character in someone else's drama. Because if every relationship ended badly, maybe it's not them, maybe it's a pattern. Let me introduce you to Emily. In her early 30s, radiant in intelligence and empathy, she once told me, my last 3 relationships were hell. Toxic. Manipulative. I guess I just choose the wrong men. Pause there. Emily didn't see that she carried the same anxiety into each new connection. She described ex after ex as toxic, but saw no pattern in her own responses to conflict. Then one day, she met a gentle, secure partner. She ended it, not because he was harmful, but because he wasn't dysfunctional enough, she told me. Eyes downcast, I realized I was addicted to the drama. I missed the conflict. I thought calm meant boring. That's the core of why all my exes were toxic can be dangerous. It hides this truth. Sometimes we chase the wrong type of relationship over and over. The Stoics knew this about pain, blame, and growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." If every partner has been toxic, perhaps the lens needs cleaning. And Epictetus reminds us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. You can't control who others are, but you can control who you become. When someone's story ends with "they were toxic," the unspoken continuation is, "I didn't learn. I didn't grow. I stayed the same." Psychological research shows labeling all exes as toxic can be a symptom of unhealed narcissism, not in the pathological sense, but in the pattern of being unable to see your role in repeated conflict. When you say they were toxic, you've given them the script and positioned yourself as faultless. When every relationship ends this way, the story becomes repetitive, and you, the central character, never change. Let me ask you, have you ever paused and thought, why did I stay when I felt tension? What patterns did I ignore? What could I have done differently? Because true healing doesn't just name those who hurt you, it includes naming the ways you contributed and choosing not to repeat those behaviors. Meet Michael, a man in his early 40s, attentive, deep, kind. He'd been in 3 relationships, each ended with him being described as too controlling, too quiet, or not spiritual enough. He said, "Yeah, those women were toxic, but honestly, I never spoke up. I never said what I needed. I walked away with all the blame because I didn't assert what I felt." Michael's realization didn't come overnight. It came after therapy helped him see he was the villager who never defended his voice. Today, he's building peace in communication, saying what matters, expressing expectations, letting relationships evolve. As learned, not all endings are about toxicity. Some are about misalignment. Here's how to move beyond "all my exes were toxic" into something more empowering. 1. Pause and expand the story. Rewrite the narrative. I had relationships that ended painfully, and here's what I learned. To own your choices, reflect on patterns, boundaries, emotional responses. What do they say about your journey? 3. Stop glorifying drama. Real growth often looks like calm stability over instability. 4. Seek feedback. Ask trusted friends, therapists, mentors, what could have gone differently. 5. Invite alignment. Your next relationship doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be aligned. Shared boundaries, mutual respect, thoughtful communication. Epictetus said, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought." If every thought is "I always attract toxicity," your lens distorts all new possibilities. Instead, replace it with, "I can choose partners who reflect my growth because I now know who I want to be." If you're watching this, and it hits close, know this: you deserve more than a cycle of blame. You deserve connection, not chaos. You deserve calm, but also passion. You deserve to be seen not just by others, but by yourself. So let this be your turning point. Let this phrase, "all my exes were toxic," be replaced with, "my past relationships shaped me, but they don't define me." You don't need to repeat their patterns. You don't need to hold on to their toxicity. You are more than your past. You are your next choice. 6. Double quotes. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. This version weaves philosophical insight with storytelling to reflect Stoic principles, emotional maturity, and honest introspection. We've all heard it, maybe even said it ourselves. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. It sounds bold, empowering, like a shield for imperfection, a banner of authenticity. But behind that swagger lies a trap. the illusion that instability should be accepted as normal, and that love is conditional on chaos. Let's slow down and examine what this phrase really means and whether it honors love or excuses disruption. At first, this phrase feels like permission to be raw, unedited, imperfect. It offers a powerful reminder: we all have shadows, we all have breakdowns, and true love holds space for that. That's valid. But the issue isn't acknowledging our brokenness, it's how we frame it. When we say, "If you can't take me at my worst," we're shifting the burden to the other person. We're expecting them to absorb turbulence. Imagine a relationship as a dance. You step forward in vulnerability. They respond with understanding, and together, you find rhythm. But if one partner keeps stepping into chaos, constantly expecting the other to follow, they're no longer dancing together. They're dragging someone along. That phrase becomes less about honesty and more about emotional abdication. Consider Isabel. She's creative, magnetic, deeply emotional. She lives loudly in art, in conversation, in heartbreak. When she says, "If you can't handle me at my worst," she isn't just asking for acceptance of occasional bad moods. She's claiming normalcy for unpredictable episodes, sudden rage, guilt trips, passive aggression. Her partner, Michael, fell in love with her joy, her depth. But soon he became her emotional punch bag. Every argument was followed by a plea: "You can't see me." And if he protested, she demanded, "If you can't take this, don't deserve me." Eventually, Michael found himself walking on eggshells, fearing the next explosion, never knowing if harmony would follow anger or more storm. This isn't intimacy. It's emotional exhaustion dressed as authenticity. The Stoics measured greatness not in moments of bliss, but in responses to disruption. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react that matters." A truly powerful person can face their worst and still stand, but they don't use it as a license to break things around them. Marcus Aurelius taught that genuine virtue is stable, connected, and responsible. We don't walk into a room and demand forgiveness for every flaw. We grow toward consistency. That phrase, "If you can't handle me," implies that drama is part of your core. That anyone who demands boundaries is selfish. That instability equals depth, but real depth doesn't destabilize the people around you. A difficult morning, a moment of failure, a bad day, that's temporary tragedy. But habitual chaos? That's not a trait, it's a choice. Labels matter. If your worst self is constantly in view of anger, unpredictability, defensiveness are regular invitations, then the phrase becomes a rule, rather than a shrug of humility. It says, "Chaos is my baseline. Accept that or leave." That's not vulnerability. That's conditioning someone to expect emotional turbulence. That burden is heavy, and you can't call it love when someone is buried under your storms. Healthy partnership is like synchronized, breathing moments of calm, moments of intensity, but never constant surges or swells. In Stoicism, the word apatheia, peace of mind, underlies emotional maturity, not absence of feelings, but mastery of them. If your phrase becomes a mandate for them to hold you, pick you up, cover for you every time you're asking too much, because real empathy and care require emotional reserves, boundaries, dignity. A partner should never feel responsible for holding you together forever, because partnership thrives when to stand, not when one is forced to constantly catch the other. The phrase also risks excusing behavior rather than acknowledging it. It often crops up as, "I can be explosive. You just have to love me anyway." But explosive behavior causes ripple effects, stress, confusion, distrust. When guilt follows annoyance, that's not healthy. That's emotional shifting guilt. In psychological studies on relationships, emotional unpredictability and chronic instability are strong predictors of long-term distress and burnout, not passion. Habits don't disappear with apologies. They fade when ownership replaces deflection. What if you said, I have moments of struggle. When I see them, I'm working on it. That's different. It doesn't bargain. It takes responsibility. And it invites support, not demands it. Here's the shift from, if you can't take my worst, don't deserve my best, to, I'm working on growing. If you can be patient while I do, I'd love to walk together. That changes the energy. It invites collaboration, not boxing someone into silence or endless stability. Michael once said to Isabel, I want to be there for you, but when things are explosive, I withdraw out of fear. She replied, I get that. When I'm spiraling, I do want your presence, not your silence. That dialogue was critical. It restated her rawness without weaponizing it. It welcomed understanding without weaponizing need. From then on, she learned to say, I feel tense, not, I feel undone. He learned to respond with, I'm here. Do you need space or words? No one screamed deserve or can't take. Instead, they nurtured trust step by unstable step. In Stoic growth, truly acknowledging your worst means naming it. I get moody when I feel overlooked. I get anxious when connection feels shallow. I lash out when I feel powerless. When you define it, you discover its triggers. Then you transform moments from chaos into insight. You say, I notice sadness in me. Not, you must sit with my sadness or belong. That's responsibility, not martyrdom. A Stoic shines light on a wound, not branded darkness. Because once you stop using chaos as a gatekeeping tool, we all win. You regain trust both from others and from within. You find equilibrium because relationships woven from mutual respect don't collapse when storms pass. You earn peace knowing your worst isn't destiny, and your best isn't hostage. By deconstructing the phrase, if you can't handle me, you don't lose authenticity. You gain accountability. Picture your relationship. A fire sits between you, not so wild it burns everything, but enough to keep you warm. Sometimes flickers, sometimes roaring gusts, but you don't insist that the whole forest burn for your heat. That's the difference. If anyone can't handle you at your worst, maybe the fault lies not in them but in the chaos you insist upon. Love is steadfastness disguised in vulnerability, not volatility dressed up as depth. So next time you feel like saying, if you can't handle me at my worst, pause, because that phrase is not humble. It's a line in the sand. Instead, ask yourself, can I handle it? Can I grow through it? Can I be honest and still build peace? Because if you can, then you don't need a shield. You just need a steady hand. Silence isn't always peace. Some whispers echo louder than screams. Some memories aren't forgiven but stored, waiting to be used. And sometimes, what we call being real is simply avoiding growth. Stoicism reminds us, we can't control others, but we can control how we respond. We are not the sum of past mistakes unless we choose to be. Power doesn't come from dominance but from clarity. If you've ever fallen quiet from fear of being blamed again, if you've labeled every ex as toxic, if you've said, handle me at my worst, thinking it's strength, no. This, Stoicism doesn't deny emotion, it gives it a compass. Forgiveness is a decision. Growth is a journey. And inner freedom is a discipline of the awakened mind. If you're seeking a deeper, calmer, more intentional life, subscribe now to join our community, a space for those who value growth over drama, clarity over chaos, and presence over perfection. Strength doesn't need noise, just presence, reflection, and responsibility. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Stoic journey.